This is the L3 Leadership Podcast, episode number 124. What's up, everybody? Welcome to episode number 124 of the L3 Leadership Podcast. My name is Doug Smith, and I'm the founder of L3 Leadership. We are a leadership development company based out of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and our purpose is to help you become the best leader that you can be. If you're new to this podcast, every month we're committed to bringing you 3 new episodes to help you grow in your leadership. One will always be a talk from our leadership events that we host. Once a month, you'll get a personal interview that I do with a high-level leader, and then once a month, you'll also get a personal leadership lesson by me. If you've been listening to the podcast for a while, I would really appreciate it if you would hop on iTunes or whatever you use to listen to podcasts and leave a rating and review, and also subscribe to the podcast. That really helps us grow our podcast listenership organically. So thank you for that. I'm really excited about this episode. You're going to get to hear Dan Dupee, who is the chairman of the board of the CCO. And this is a talk that he gave at our L3 Leadership Breakfast. It was actually our last breakfast of 2016. That went so fast. But it was a great breakfast to end on. Dan did a phenomenal job. And in his talk, he spoke on creating organizational culture and some of the things that he did to shape the culture at the CCO. If you're unfamiliar with the CCO, they're a very large college ministry. They're responsible for raising over $12 million a year, and they have over 250 employees. And so Dan was responsible for that for many, many years. And actually, not only did he lead that organization, he also raised up a successor, Vince Burens, who just recently took over the CCO in Dan's place. And so Dan has a wealth of knowledge. He led a great organization for many, many years, and he actually raised up a next generation leader to take his place, and he handed off the entire organization to him. So you're going to learn a lot. I'm really excited for you to listen to it. I also want to mention, you'll hear in the interview, Dan also just recently wrote a book on parenting. It's called It's Not Too Late. It's a fantastic book, and I would really encourage you, whether you are a parent right now or not, if you plan on ever having a family, I encourage you to get this book. It'll really help you shape your values and be proactive on your growth and shaping the way you want to run your family versus being reactive whenever you hit an emergency. So I'll include a link in the show notes to Dan's book, but you can also find out how to order it and more information at ccojubilee.org/not too late. And before we jump into the talk, I just want to thank our sponsors, BAB Inc. They are an insurance broker company and a consulting firm in Pennsylvania and all across the nation, and they host our monthly leadership breakfasts. They're led by my friend Russell Livingston, and he is very passionate about developing next generation leaders, and you can check out all the great work that they do at babbins.com. That's BABBINS.com. And I encourage you to check them out. So that being said, let's just jump right into Dan's talk, and I'll be back at the end with a few announcements.
About a month ago, I was coming back from a funeral about an hour away from Pittsburgh. And one of the members of the executive team that I had led, that Vince now leads, was in the car with me. And she asked this question. She said, "So how you doing?" And look, that's a pretty normal question to ask. But in my case, 2016 has been a year where, after 17 years of leading an organization, I handed the baton to my successor. It's been a year where I was published as a writer for the first time. 2 of our sons, we have 4 kids, 2 of our kids got married this year. This has been an unbelievable year of transitions. So I've been asked that question, how are you doing? More in the last 12 months. Ooh, coming through hot here. More in the last 12 months, probably than in the rest of my life combined. So I attempted to give my cohort a good, honest, emotionally transparent, nuanced answer to the question how you were doing. Well, there's ups and downs, and sometimes it's tough. And when I stopped talking, and I essentially said nothing. But when I stopped talking, she said, please don't take this the wrong way. I think you need a better answer. I think you need a better answer to the question. And she went on to say, look, Christian ministries, organizations in general, Christian ministries in particular, are not known for having good transitions in their leadership. And this is a good transition that we're having here. And the transition is to a leader and a group of leaders that you prepared, that you developed. And you still get to be part of the mission that you really love. And I thought, wow, it's like school's in, but I'm not the teacher anymore. I don't know how I feel about this, you know. So finally, she said to me, maybe your emotions just haven't caught up with what's true. Which I thought was like, wow, this is really good. Because, you know, to be honest, at that point, having been asked, how are you doing, repeatedly for months and months and months, I was really tired about talking about my emotions anyway. So finally, as we came closer to Pittsburgh, I said, Nicole, let me ask you something. Did you intentionally ask for a ride back from this funeral just so you could tell me what you told me? And she said, no, that wasn't really it. I was standing in line waiting to get lunch after the funeral, and I heard somebody else ask you that question. And I heard how you answered it. And then she said this. She said, you know, you've been willing to coach me, and I thought, you know, maybe I could help you by coaching you. For somebody in my stage of leadership, and I don't think I'm done leading, I'm 57 years old, I was president of the CCO for 17 years. But for somebody at this point in the leadership journey, I'm thinking a lot about what's behind me, the legacy of the leadership that God's called me to. And the legacy is not like, we built this great organization. And I'll tell you some stuff about the CCO. It is an incredible organization. But at the core of the legacy are people. And someday you will be confronted with the parts of your legacy that you can identify. And some of those things are going to be really good. And candidly, there are things in my leadership legacy where I wish I had a do-over. You know, I wish I could hit the button and have another shot. Because facing the consequences of decisions and the ways I spent time, there's some things that, you know, there are things I'm not happy with. And then there's the part of your legacy that you're never going to know in this life. Most of the impact that leaders have is unknown to the leader. You know, when I was working on the book that I wrote is called It's Not Too Late. And the book is addressed to parents because what we who are in campus ministry find, you know, we got 60% of kids who grow up in the church who leave the church during college. And we who are in college ministry can have a great impact on that, and we do. But there are some things that happen before kids even get to college that come out of the homes they're in that are tough for us to deal with. And so, hence, a parenting book. And in the book, I did, to write it, I did focus groups. And one of my focus groups was a man named Chuck, father of 4, friend of mine. And he was willing to go the extra mile and actually ask his kids, hey, what have your mom and I done that's been helpful in helping you own your own faith as an adult? And what have we done that's been unhelpful? So his youngest child, his son, was a sophomore in college, and he wrote this beautiful email back to his dad. And in the email, he referred to something called the talk. Dad, when we had the talk, that was a big deal. And I thought to myself, if I could figure out what's in the talk, my book will write itself, right? You know, this is going to be easy. So I said, Chuck, what was in the talk? And he just looked at me very quietly for, this pregnant pause. And he looked at me and said, I don't know. I don't know. I don't remember the talk. I don't know what he's talking about. And see, in leadership, one of the things you need to understand as you're leading other people, and you can be leading people in a workplace environment, you can be leading people inside your own home. When you're leading, a lot of the impact that you have is not something you can plan for. It just happens in the day by day, moment by moment. Just the regular stuff that you're doing together with other folks. That's where there's an impact. So part of your legacy, part of my legacy is not something we can ever know. We're just not going to know, again, in this life, what kind of impact we've had on other people. At the core of this, I suggested is people, and at the core of that, if there's one thing that I could commend to you, it's to pay attention to the culture of the teams, organizations, and families that you lead. And so this is sort of me as a leader who's led for a long time, telling you, over the course of your life, as you develop this leadership legacy, this is one thing you absolutely want to attend to: culture. Now, organizational culture is, the hard part about it is it's really squishy. Like, what is it? It's invisible, it's implicit, not explicit. Vince and I spent a whole morning one time just trying to take elements of organizational culture that are true for us and take them from implicit to explicit. And it was tough work. So I'm going to give you the most basic definition of organizational culture you'll ever get. And it's true for families, it's true for, it applies everywhere. And it's simply this: culture is how we do things around here. It's how we do things around here. It's a wholly inadequate definition, but it's better than all the other inadequate definitions that I've seen, right? It's how we do things around here. And I've got 5 or 6 things that I want to talk to you about relative to developing good cultures in the things that you're part of. And here's why. Good culture is the gift that keeps on giving. When you have a good culture in your family, on your team, in your business, people will do things that you had always hoped they would do without you having to tell them. People 2 or 3 degrees removed from you will catch this like a virus, and they'll know the appropriate way to respond to problems, the appropriate way to handle customers. They'll know what to do in a pinch. That's what good culture does for you. It's a gift that keeps on giving. It just perpetuates itself. It spreads. Toxic culture is a wholly different story. Toxic or dysfunctional culture is so powerful that even a good person who walks into a toxic culture usually will not win. The culture will defeat them. They will not change the culture. You see that play out over and over again. Most dramatically, in the military, particularly in Vietnam, but in World War II, there was something that happened called fragging, which was people killing their commanding officer. And it's an extreme expression of dysfunctional culture, but it's teams, groups of people locked into a very bad place who are expecting their commanding officer to miraculously pull them out of it. Does that ever sound like any leadership scenarios you've ever seen? I've seen this happen in churches probably more than any other place. We're going to get a new pastor, and they're going to make everything wonderful. Happens in businesses too. So dysfunctional culture will wipe you out. Good culture is the gift that keeps on giving. I think it's worth our time and attention to talk a little more about it. So the first thing in having a really good culture, it's very helpful for people to know why they're there. My former life was spent in the world of temporary employment. My family ran a temp agency, staffing, call it whatever you want to. So we would have anywhere from 1,500 to 2,000 people working for us every week on temporary assignments. And they could be doing anything from a CEO job to an entry-level factory job. But most of our folks were doing clerical support and factory work. and their paychecks meant a lot to them. They needed a check every week to keep things going for most people that work for us. But when we did employee surveys, compensation was never the top concern for people, even though many of them were living hand to mouth. In what should be the most mercenary group of workers that you can think of, our people were telling us, we want to work in a place where we're respected. We want to engage in something that has meaning. That's what people are looking for. And if your team, your family, your church, your business, if people are not clear on why they're there, you're stealing thunder. You're stealing energy away from them. The tendency over time is to get less clear on the mission of an organization. When people first start something, like at L3 right now, it's pretty clear what you guys are here to do. Over time, things get a little fuzzier. But one of the first things I did in the CCO, the organization had been around for 28 years when I became president, and it was a very good organization. But it wasn't an organization that was as clear as it needed to be on its purpose. So that's what we spent time doing. You will want to do that in your teams, reminding people of the connection between what they do. If you've got somebody stapling paper all day, it's up to you as the leader to make the connection between paper stapling and the front line of the mission. That's part of your job. So getting clear on the mission, job one. Raising the level of communication. The reason this is important is that communication is directly related to trust. Trust and communication, think of them as being coupled. I'll let you do the mental math as to why that is. Just believe me. Trust and communication are connected. And trust will go up and it'll go down with the level of communication in the business or the team or the family that you're in. Trust rises and falls with communication. And the CCO, one of the things that it's a great place to work. So I think for 14 years we've been acknowledged as one of the best places to work among our peers in the country. It's not an easy award to win. It's based on an extensive employee survey. And as well as we've done, every year there's going to be at least one comment to the effect that we're not as good at communicating as we should be. You can chase this thing forever and you'll never get it just right, but you need to stay after it. Because the second part, not related to communication and trust, is that in the absence of information, most people will assume the worst. If it's up to our imaginations, we'll fill in stuff that's not good. So communication, raising the level of communication, absolutely critical. All right, stoking gratitude and modeling forgiveness. Gratitude is this is something I got onto as I was working on the book. Being grateful is a wonderful state of being for a human. And having a grateful boss is one of the best things that there is, because a grateful leader is a leader that helps you understand your own gifts, because they're looking to catch you in the act of expressing who it is God made you to be and tell you. Those of us who are leading need to understand something about gratitude. It's a discipline. It's not a feeling. It's a discipline. Because you're going to need, as a leader, to express gratitude when you don't feel it. Because you may not be having a good day, but you may have somebody on your team do something that needs to be acknowledged so that they know to do more of it. Gratitude. In families, it's a big deal too. Our family, when we get back from a special event, and we've had a lot of them this year, or a vacation, we sit down and try and think of everything that we're grateful for. And the list can go on and on and on. We sat down at Thanksgiving. There's 8 of us now. We sat around the table, and we wrote down, pages worth of stuff from 2016 that we're grateful for. And it goes from a coconut bliss ice cream. So that would be the, isn't that transcendent? Coconut bliss ice cream. Wow, that's a game changer. It goes all the way from that to Uncle Forrest coming to Spencer and Hannah's wedding. Because see, Uncle Forrest had been alienated from his family, and nobody thought he would come to the wedding, and he did. Good stuff. A heart that's filled with gratitude will not be filled with bitterness. They can't exist in the same space. Gratitude's also the best thing you got working for you when you experience success. When your mission's really cranking, what's the thing that could do you in? What comes before a fall? Pride. When we become proud, I'm a Christian, and as a Christian, I buy completely what the scriptures say about life. And there isn't any question in the scriptures how God feels about the proud. It says he opposes them. You want to be successful in what you're doing, and the tendency is to go like, man, I must be just all that good, right? We are awesome. And gratitude gives a different way to go with that. Thank you. Thank you for allowing this to be. Thank you for allowing us to thrive in the mission that we're doing. Thank you for letting us do something that has meaning and purpose that's going to be a game changer for people. So gratitude is a big deal. If you're a leader, I suggest it's a discipline. The starting place for you as a leader in using it as a discipline is to acknowledge the good work of other people. That's the basic fundamental starting place. Just start stoking gratitude. If you journal and you're not keeping track of things for which you're grateful and people to whom you want to express gratitude, make it part of your journaling process. It adds about a minute. It can be done pretty fast. The other thing is forgiveness. Now, when our boys were 9, they were playing Little League Baseball in Hampton Township. I was a Little League parent, not a coach, parent. And in one game, they struck out back-to-back. It's the problem you have with twins. It's like, oh, this is great. More. And they both called third strikes. So I felt compelled between innings to give them some fatherly counsel. And I must have done it with a degree of intensity because they both started crying. So I was one of those, right? I had become the enemy. I was like the over-the-top Little League parent. Oh my gosh, and in that moment, my wife had instituted a liturgy of forgiveness, of confession and forgiveness in our family that was sort of the law. Talk about how we do things around here. And it was totally credit her for this. What I needed to do was name the offense that I'd committed. I needed to name it. So I said, look, I'm so sorry I took something fun and made it unfun. Now later I could have a more elaborate confession. I'm sorry I transferred my own athletic inadequacies onto you but at the moment it was probably been like at the moment it was supposed to be fun, I made it unfun. Will you forgive me? And this is the moment in a lot of conflict where, typically we just want the moment to be over. It's so uncomfortable. And we'll say, that's okay. Not the right answer. The right answer is, I forgive you. I forgive you. Hugely important inside of families. Family culture, just giantly, giantly important to not let roots of resentment grow because of a lack of forgiveness. I think it's important inside of business cultures too. And this is where people are like, yeah, you're a ministry guy. Of course you think that. You know when I became convinced of this? It was through my engineering friends. Because work is a process. It's a series of handoffs between people. And how well do people hand things off and work together when they are existing in a relationship where they're angry at each other? Do you know what happens then? You ever heard of a workaround? 100% of the time when people are out of proper relationship with each other, in any context I ever led in, 100% of the time they do workarounds. Every time. They don't do every workaround, but they will at some point in a moment of truth decide, I'm just upset with Dara. I don't want to talk to her. I'm going to go around her. I'm going to find somebody who's easier. You can't be great if you do that. You can't be great if you do that. If you allow that to be part of your culture, you're not going to deliver to your clients, to your customers, to your parishioners, to whoever it is. You're not going to deliver what you ought to deliver. You're going to sub-optimize your mission. I think it's a big deal. So having that, and of course the best way to do it is to model it. And the best way to model it is to screw up, which is a daily opportunity for a leader. Screw up and offend somebody, go to them, apologize, ask their forgiveness. Now we're getting somewhere. I've got a lot of practice on that one. At home, at work. Just check my time here. Doing okay? Okay. So here's the tougher parts of leadership. The rest of the stuff I'm telling you is, these are disciplines, they're opportunities. By the way, you don't want to try and do everything I'm telling you. Pick one thing from this morning. This one, is that we become what we tolerate. So a big part of culture, this is how we do things around here, but the footnote to that is particularly what we tolerate. So this is where the leader has to sort of draw the line and have a way of letting people know, that's not something, you don't bring that here. You don't bring that here. So easy example. Anybody ever receive a flaming email, all caps? How does that feel? Isn't that nice? That's such a good feeling. So that's one of the things at the CCO. You find out in short order the first time you send a flaming email, we don't do that here. You got something that's difficult to talk to somebody about, or you're angry with them. You call them on the phone. You get in front of them face to face. Absolutely under no circumstances. You get one shot, you get a warning. You keep doing that, you're not going to be around. That's the hard part about this conversation about what you tolerate. It means sometimes that people can't be there anymore. The toughest thing relative to this, so when people are clearly and flagrantly out of bounds, we have to be willing to have those tough conversations, which I'll just talk about briefly in a minute. The tougher things are where we've got something that approaches sort of mediocrity. There was a young woman who was a peer of mine who worked with me in the business. We kind of came up together, and I was assistant manager of an office. She was in the office. And, competent human resources person, smart woman, very, very nice, but very low energy. Now, you have to understand the world of temporary help is an emergency room for employment. Urgency is your breakfast, okay? I'll probably never get it out of my system because everything's like right now. People aren't calling you because things are great. They're calling you because the receptionist just decided she was going to move to Hawaii or something, and they need somebody today. And so my dad used to give a speech it's called the weakest link in the chain speech. Gave it every year. You're only as strong as the weakest link in your chain. And I felt a strong sense of conviction that this person was probably never going to be able to do what we needed her to do. Coaching, counseling, on it would go, and we probably wouldn't get there. So I went and told the manager, who thanked me for my gift, because she was going to have the hard conversation with the young woman. And it did result in her, her employment being terminated. Now, the interesting footnote to that story is because of the way we did that, she came back later and became a client. She found the right position, which she couldn't find as long as she was working for us. Now, terminating somebody's employment is an extreme example of deciding this is not something we're going to tolerate. But I put it out there for you because I want you to know as a leader, there are some costs to doing leadership. And when you're in the sandbox deciding what you tolerate and don't tolerate, it's costly. But you got to do it, which brings us to the next point, the next hard thing you got to do. You got to walk toward your problems. Problems happen. Organizations are made up of imperfect people. Stuff goes on that you wish wasn't going to go on. People get sideways. They do goofy things. Maybe you've done a goofy thing and you've got ripple effects from that. Maybe it's through nobody's fault in particular, and yet there it is. It's a problem. What do we typically do with problems? Who likes dealing with problems? You're out there. Come on, be honest. Somebody like dealing with problems? There we go. Such people exist. Most of us would rather not. And so we have to recognize we have a natural aversion to it. And then here's how we rationalize it. Then this is understandable. Leaders always have more things on their plate than they can handle. If you feel like, oh my gosh, I've got too much, from now until probably they shovel dirt on you, you're going to have too much. It's a state of being for a leader. Setting priorities, that's a talk for a different day. But for now, just acknowledging that you're busy and you'd rather not deal with the thing that's in front of you, and recognize this, that the work is now the problem and the problem is the work. So the thing that you need to give yourself space to do, if it's serious enough to be on your plate and in front of you, and it's not something that should be done by somebody else, and you're feeling like, boy, I think we need to address this, you take as much time and as much energy as you need to take to address the problem in the right way. If that means getting in the car and driving somewhere and having a conversation with somebody, whatever it means, you do it. It's handling problems well for leaders sets an expectation in the culture that will perpetuate itself. Initially, I was the person on the point to handle problems in the CCO because I needed to show what my expectations were for how we were going to do this. We're not going to go around them. We're going to go toward them. And as I did that, other leaders around me were astute enough to go, okay, this is how we do this. This is how we handle problems around here. And after a while, they were doing it. So walking toward your problems. And finally, lastly, you're the person who's the primary steward of your growth and your integrity. Whatever team you're leading, again, be that a family, be that a business that you're growing, you're part of a program of something larger, whatever team you're leading is probably not going to be able to grow past you. One of the most sobering moments as a leader is when I moved to Pittsburgh and realized, I'm likely to become the next president of the CCO. And if I'm not growing, I will effectively stunt the growth of an entire organization by my own being stuck in one place. It's an impact that leaders have. You have that much influence on the thing that you're doing. So attending to your own growth. The good news is, in a room like this, with a group of people that have decided to show up somewhere at 8 o'clock on Saturday morning, there's a bias toward growing as a leader. This is the kind of stuff you want to avail yourself of. Probably as long as L3 is going every month, you want to be here every month. You want to be in relationship with people who make you better. And sometimes those are going to be older folks. On Monday, I had lunch with a friend of the CCOs and a friend of mine. Yesterday, Vince had lunch with the same guy, and this guy was building into both of us from his own experience and in his own way. He's the kind of person that will make me, and I think make Vince, he's going to make us better men and better leaders. You need those kind of people in your life. Sometimes they're older. I certainly commend you be in some kind of connected relationship with the older and wiser. I mean, I'm 57 and I'm looking up to 60, 70, and 80-year-olds. But also in peer relationships. I have 4 people I talk to every week. 4 other men who are leading things. And, we get pretty down to brass tacks. There's pretty much nothing. We know each other's deep secrets, the ones you'd rather not tell anybody. So that's part of it. And then, so doing something like this, where you're being equipped, doing something where you're in relationship with people who can make you better. And then finally, finding some quiet. Things really move fast when you're leading. My time of quiet through most of my tenure in the CCO was 6 or 6:30 to 8, 2 hours in the morning, from 6 or 6:30 to 8:30. That was the time when I could do work, but there wasn't anybody around, and I could think, and I could pray, and I could get reoriented toward what the real job was that I was being called to do. Integrity relates to, it's just being consistent in who you are. Remember at the beginning when I said a lot of your leadership impact isn't something you'll ever know, because followers, they're the ones that decide the moment of truth, not you. So you're having an impact when you don't know you are. That's why it's important to have some integrity, because in your unguarded moments, you may have the greatest influence. So having consistency in who you are. We're all going to have integrity outages. That's why we have this forgiveness thing. But the leader's example's hugely, hugely powerful. Who you are actually matters a lot more than what you do. Final word of encouragement. So I've given you a list of all these things, that are like, if you're going to form culture, here's things to attend to. The being clear on the mission, doing the communication, stoking gratitude, encouraging forgiveness, paying attention to what you tolerate, walking towards your problems, and attending to your own growth and your own integrity. It's hard giving a bunch of busy people a list of other things they got to think about and do. But I want to encourage you with this. As a Christian, one of the most apparent truths for me over these years has been that I am not actually the architect of my own leadership development. I think it's important to have somebody bigger and smarter than you, ultimately figuring out how all these experiences and all these people and all these other things that shape a leader are coming together in your life. And I would encourage you that there is such a person, and that's God. God superintends over the lives of leaders to grow them into the people He wants them to be, to bring blessing and goodness into the lives of other folks. And He has your back. Thank you very much.
Hey everyone, thank you so much for listening to Dan's talk. We really hope you enjoyed it. You can find ways to connect with Dan and the CCO and buy a copy of Dan's book at l3leadership.org/episode 124. As always, if you want to stay in touch with us, just go to our website at l3leadership.org and you can sign up for our email list and you'll get a free copy of my ebook, Making the Most of Mentoring, which is my step-by-step process for getting meetings with mentors. And also, I'd really encourage you, if you've been involved with the L3 community and want to take a next step, we encourage you to join or launch your own mastermind group. If you're unfamiliar with what mastermind groups are, I host a live webinar every Tuesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern Time online, and I go over everything that you need to learn about those, and it's really a great way to really catapult your growth. If you want to learn more about our mastermind groups, go to l3leadership.org/mastermind. I want to also thank our other sponsor, 068. They're a company that actually starts companies with ex-convicts, which is unbelievable. They also have a company called Work Pittsburgh that only hires ex-convicts, and that organization is led by my friend Daniel Bull, who has one of the craziest stories I've ever heard, but I just love what he's doing in our city and the work that he's doing. So you can check out their work at 068.org, all spelled out. That's 068.org. As always, I'd appreciate if you would subscribe, rate, and review this podcast on iTunes or whatever you use to listen to it. It really does make a difference. And as always, I like to close with a quote. And I love this quote that I read recently by John Maxwell. And he said this. He said, "People tend to become what the most important people in their lives think they will become." And I just want to encourage everyone around you, give them a bigger vision of themselves than they have for themselves, and raise their bars. And so thanks again for listening and being a part of the L3 Leadership Podcast. Laura and I appreciate you so much, and we hope you have a wonderful day.